Hello and welcome to Furious Driving and to possibly the best car in the world. Now this is an interesting video which I thought was probably a good time to do it because, as you may know if you follow this channel regularly, I have one of these. This is a Mercedes Benz W123. This is in fact a 200, which is, I guess you would call it the entry level, the purest form of the breed. I've got a 230e, which is the most commonly found example of the breed. Actually from the same year, this is a 1983 and so is mine, curiously enough. This actually belongs to Joe Miller from Classics World, and his has been his dream car for some time, and he finally acquired one a couple of years ago, and like me found it had got some holes in it, but his holes weren't too bad, and so his holes have been patched up. My holes, on the other hand, are currently being patched up, and the extent of the work is quite frightening, and I'm about to have to hand over a considerable sum of money to get a shell without holes in it back. The thing is, it's one of those cars that it is such an iconic, solid vehicle that even if you don't like the W123, you have to respect it. And I've always liked these cars. I've loved the look of them. I've enjoyed that enduring sense you get from just seeing one. That it feels like it is every cliche, every vault door hewn from granite, etc. cliche you can possibly think of are all applicable to this car. And I've always wanted one, and so I finally got one. I've never driven it. It arrived as a non-runner project, and it got worse. I've driven these things around car parks, so I've got an idea of how they feel, but I've never driven one on the road. So as I say, I'm about to lay down a silly amount of money for getting mine back on the road. I thought I'd better take one for a drive and see if I like them or not, because I don't know if I do. So big thank you to Joe for letting me take his W123 out on the road, risk it in the traffic, and see what I think of it. Gosh, it's smooth. And bear in mind, I've driven it less than a mile so far. I don't know the clutch yet and that kind of thing, but it's already feeling a lovely thing to be in. Oh, this bridge is a pain in the bum. Now first, a little bit of background. Mercedes had been building big saloons for quite some time. It was very much their bag. But the car before this, known as the Stroke 8 in Mercedes world, the W114, that had been phenomenally successful, and that gave Mercedes the confidence, if you like, to really go big on its successor, the W123. At the same time, they were plotting the new S-Class as well, and so this follows both an evolution of the predecessor, which is very much the Mercedes way of evolution, not revolution. Find what works and enhance it rather than throw things away and start all over again. But also, it took in elements of the new car that was going to be its stablemate, its running mate in the years to come. Now, work started on it back in the mid-1960s. They began design work in 1967 for the exterior, and it was all signed off by 1973. And it emerged dewy-eyed to an excited world at the Frankfurt Motor Show in 1975. And they kept it in production for 11 years until 1986, with various revisions and updates in terms of the mechanicals underneath and slight styling tweaks up top, although really very little changed in terms of the sheet metal. Now there were multiple engines with a variety of powers. This is the entry-level 200, which is the least powerful. It's also carbureted rather than fuel injected, which makes it, again, the least powerful. 0 to 60 on this car is like 14 plus seconds. But this isn't a car about speed, this is a car about comfort and waft. By jingo, do you waft in this thing? Curious to note the seating position. It is adjustable to go. I could be sitting a little bit higher if I really wanted to. We're only doing 28 miles an hour behind this bike, but I don't really feel like I've got the oomph to get past it on this short straight. Yeah, I do feel very low. I could raise the seat up a tiny bit, but it does feel very low. And the steering wheel feels absolutely enormous. There is power steering, and it feels insanely light. It kind of feels like you don't need a steering wheel quite this big, but they have given you the option of doing it. Mercedes at the time were doing their best to sell something to everybody, but what they were selling was a quality product, and you paid for that quality product, but then you could personalise it and make it very much your own. So this car has only got a couple of options on it, but you could absolutely go to town. Like with the Minis, when the R50 came out in 2001, you could spend the price of the car again on options. You could very much do the same thing with a W123. For example, my 230 has got a town and country horn, which is a two-tone or two-volume horn for when you're in the country driving quickly or in the town going slowly, and it's got ABS, which is almost unheard of in 1983. You could have had this as a saloon, later on as a coupe, or as a 5-door estate, which are now the most sought after cars of all and command the highest price premium. Some of them go for like 40 or 50 grand or even more, whereas it's about 10,000 or so for a good tidy saloon. But then things got interesting. They did a factory limousine option, and even a factory chassis cab ambulance was available. These were European mile munchers. They were designed to go a long way, cross continents, all that kind of thing, at high speed in extreme comfort. They were simple but comfortable and hard wearing. Taxi companies adored these things because they would do just hundreds of thousands of miles with little or no problems. And when they finally reached the end of their European lives, 500,000 miles or so, or 500,000 kilometres in Europe, they would ship them off to Africa, where they were loved for their reputation for longevity and the very, very tough suspension's ability to cope with the no roads. And it's that exporting of these old cars onto those continents which has kind of cemented Mercedes' reputation for ultimate quality and ultimate reliability. This car's got a slight vibration, but we're cruising past 60 miles an hour. Joe said this was slow. This is not slow. This is more than adequate. Oh, it's very floaty at this speed. So the suspension is very clever on this car. At the front, it's got upper and lower wishbones with a slanted telescopic damper and spring arrangement, which are kind of an anti-dive arrangement. So even when you stand on the brakes, don't pull out in front of me. Oh, you're pulling out in front of me. Even when you stand on the brakes, the car stays fairly stable, and it's got independent rear suspension on a huge kind of floating boomerang type thing, which keeps the car, again, nice and stable at speed and through twisty corners. This is so confidence inspiring. This is really, really nice to drive. Even at a few miles an hour, this thing feels great. So this is a car which is known by many as the greatest car ever built, and by many more as absolute peak Mercedes. And there's good reason for that. Mercedes spent an inordinate amount developing this car. They won't actually say how much, but it was a lot. Listen to this. That is how a door should shut. It's the mark of quality. You know, there's no echo, there's no drumming, there's no central locking. The car just thuds, determinedly closed. The styling of this car is an interesting thing to kind of ponder over. It was started in the mid-60s, it was signed off by 1973. It was all done under the stewardship of chief designer Friedrich Geiger, who was the forerunner to Bruno Sacco, who then took over the updates and the estate car later on in the car's life. It's not a Bruno Sacco car entirely, but he has put little tweaks in there later on. So by 1983, I imagine there's some Bruno pen strokes somewhere in here. Now, the thing is, the W123 comes from an era of Mercedes when it was not extravagant. It was expensive, but not extravagant. This is a good pair of boots. This is the Sam Vimes theory of economics. If you buy cheap boots, you'll buy 10 pairs in the same time as you'd have made a good pair of boots last in the first place. So you spend more in the first place, you get longer out of your acquisition. And this is ultimate quality. This is peak Mercedes, and it was an evolution, a gentle evolution of all the previous designs that went up to it. The W114/8, the pontoon, the fintail, all led to this, a gradual evolution. So it's a similar kind of 3-box saloon. I think even The rake of the A and the C posts are virtually the same as the previous generation, but we've now got the new S-Class look, the family look, coming down onto this car with the large square headlights, which was of course the same style of car which is coming to Germany and to Europe in the 1970s into the 1980s. And the way the car looks is these long flowing lines which make it look elegant, simple, deceptively simple in fact. There are a lot of shapes going, a lot of creases and curves that you don't necessarily spot the first time you see it. But you just see the car and you think quality. You don't think extravagance, you don't think silly, you don't think frivolous, you think that's a good car. It's almost boring in a way, but it's not boring, it's good. Now this car is a 200, so it's a base model, so we've got a couple of basic things like we have got the hubcaps, which are now astonishingly expensive if you need to replace them because they're so hard to find. But even on the base model, we've got these chrome bits on the scuttles, we've got chrome mirrors, we've got this lovely side trim down the side, obviously. And of course, we have the big chrome grille with the three-pointed star on the front. Everything about this car screams quality. If you take one of these bumpers off, it's one of the most sturdy things you'll ever hold in your hands. Interesting little notes from this car to the previous generations of Mercedes. These here wiper blades are now satin black. You might think, oh, that's a little bit cheaper. Customers have complained the chrome ones, they flared in the sun and were hard to see. So I made them black. Sensible upgrades like that. A little bit of trim just here to cut down wind noise and stop spray onto the side windows. Everything Mercedes does is carefully thought out. They've evolved this stuff over the years. My current generation C-Class, which is the model below this in terms of size, the sculpting on the side of the door stops the door handle getting dirty. I think this little side trim here will do a similar job on this. Now the bonnet on these things goes on forever, and I can tell you they weigh an absolute ton when they're not attached to a car. And this front grille is attached to the bonnet and does make it a little bit tricky to get your hand underneath there. However, Mercedes have this amazing party trick, which you have to remember to do. It's called service mode. And in service mode, you flick the lever on both sides. There we go, a little help from Joe because it's a little bit tricky. There we go, straight up. It's up in the air. So now you can remove the engine on a crane without taking the bonnet off. Not many cars you can do that to. Anyway, we now have full access to the engine area, and there is so much room for activities in here. This is only the 4-cylinder 200, which means there's room for a V8 if you really wanted to. Just saying. This car, I'll mention, as Joe just pointed out to me, has been wax oiled from new, hence the yellow dirtiness. It's not rust, it's perfection, but dirty. There was a dazzling array of motors you could put in this engine bay. There were 4 petrols, there were 4 diesels. The world's first production turbo diesel went into this. It wasn't fast, but it was extremely economical, which is something you can't say about the petrols particularly. This one gets around 30-ish on average. The options list on these things was dazzling and baffling. But the basic entry point for pretty much everything was carburation on the petrols. There was, though, mechanical fuel injection as an option on everything, and the most common car you will find these days when you look into the classifieds is a 230e, because it's a slightly larger petrol engine which gives you a little bit more oomph, and the E stands for Einspreizung, or injection, and that gives you a bit more reliability, and it will basically run forever as long as it's kept in tune, and it doesn't really go out of tune very much unless you do silly things with it. This car, though, has got 130,000 miles on it, and it is, well, it runs, as you've heard, as fresh as a daisy. Interesting thing, because Mercedes are Mercedes, the best or nothing, they keep a record of literally everything. The VIN number here will tell you everything. You can go on various websites and you can find out where your car was delivered, the date it was delivered, the full spec of everything that was listed to it. Mercedes will even be able to tell you, for a price, the key number of your car. So if you lose your key, you can have a new one cut at the dealership for a car from 40 or 50 years ago. This is partly why I love Mercedes in their own special way, because they are just so precise and so good. These engines, although not hugely powerful, will go on forever. Now, because there are so many engines, there's no way I can memorise it. I'm only going to literally read it to you. We've got the 200, which came with 2 versions of engine, a 1988cc and a 1997cc, which is this one from 1980 till 1985. These came with the Stromberg carburettor. They made either 94 PS, or in this car, 109 PS and 158 or 170 Newton meters of torque. This is almost the slowest. The earlier one was 15.2 seconds to 60. This one is 14.4 seconds to 60 with a top speed of, I think, 104 miles an hour. The previous version only topped out at 99. And this particular car comes with the M102 V20 engine. Then we've got the 230s, which are the more common cars you will find. They came with a 2307cc engine until 1980, then from 1980 to 1985 a 2299cc engine, originally carbureted, making 109 PS or 108 horsepower and 186 newton meters of torque, and that would give you 106 miles an hour and a 0 to 60 of 13.7. The 230e, that will drop down to 11.5 seconds and go up to 112 miles an hour. Then we get into the, well, I say the good stuff, the 6 cylinders. The 250, which is what the yellow one my friend Barry had for a little while, that comes with the M123 engine, which is 2.5 litres, 25 cc's, running on a Solex carburettor. That makes between 129 and 140 horsepower and 196 and 200 newton meters, dropping the 0 to 60 down to 11.7 and top speed to 115. Now finally, the cream of the crop, the 280. With a carburettor, that makes 156 PS, with a fuel injection system up to 185 PS, which is 182 horsepower, and 240 newton meters a second. At its fastest, it goes 0 to 60 in 9.9 seconds. Now it's worth mentioning that in Germany back in the day, there was a cap at 2.8 litres for where the tax brackets for economical motoring ended. So Mercedes spent a lot of time working on how to get the most power out of the least amount of capacity. They kind of kept on refining and refining that, at the expense though of fuel economy, because they figured if you're spending the price of a house on a car, you're not too worried what a litre of petrol costs. So they worked that way. Let's take a look around the interior of the W123. And the first thing to notice is these door handles. These are a solid chrome base with a rubberized plastic, very sturdy plastic pull-out section. And 1983 was the year we got really good security on W123s. Mercedes went all out on it, so you can only remove these door handles from the door if you've got the key in it and the key is turned. So it makes it really hard to break into. And likewise, the ignition barrel is much harder to remove, to break into. So they're very hard to steal. So if you're investing the price of a house in the car, it's good to know it's not really going to be going anywhere unless the thief is very determined indeed. Now, let's fall into this car right now. Now what you have to remember, in this era of Mercedes, what you got was the finest quality cabin money could buy, and anything else you wanted, you basically had to pay for on top of it. So this car's got a couple of small options. We've got the 5-speed gearbox rather than the basic 4-speed. We've got a sunroof, which is actually electric, none of your manual rubbish, because again, you're paying the price of a house, you don't want to be cranking a handle like a caveman. And there's a Brano wood, which I think might have been a no-cost option. I'm not 100% sure on that particular one. Most other things were. Now looking up top, we'll start off with the fact we have got proper audio. This is the 1980s, so decent car audio is 100% not a given at this point. But we have got loudspeakers in the top corners of the dash top, and we've also got a pair of speakers in the rear parcel shelf, so we've got quadraphonic sound. We also have this rather handy, gently sloping tea shelf with a ridge, so you can put your cup of tea in there when you're out observing the poor people and enjoy your tea and biscuits in comfort. Speaking of comfort, we've also got multiple eyeball vents, 4 eyeball vents across the top of the dashboard. It's all rather lovelily sculpted in, it looks really well thought out. This car has got a slightly dropping door on the glove box, which is fairly common, but the wood isn't warped, which is very nice. And 2 more things to notice while we're looking at the dashboard area. First of all, the ignition barrel is over here on the left, because it just is, and our light switch is down here, complete with parking lights, no less. And we've got the old pull-off release handbrake just there. Jumping back into the instrument panel, this whole area is basic but perfect in its own way. It's simple, plain black with stark white dials, clear orange needles, but so much information. We've got oil pressure, we've got an economy gauge, water temperature, fuel level. Obviously we've got our speed, we've got our rev counter, and even a little clock down there. But it's all just a beautiful piece of simple but basic jewellery. And what is the most significant thing to note just here is the odometer. Not the fact this car's done 130,000 miles, no. This is one of the first cars that came with a 999,999 mile odometer, because they had confidence. In fact, not just confidence, knowledge that these cars would need that kind of distance on the odometer, because they were going to do it. And these cars are famous for just doing 500,000 miles on just oil changes. Now, stepping slightly back, we've got a huge steering wheel. I can not even get it in on a 14mm lens, but it's like a firm, slightly soft rubber with a moulded texture. This rubber area here is like a crash protection thing, and the whole thing will bend away from you in a frontal impact, and this is our horn as well. Horn test. Now that's a PARP destined to go to the moon and back multiple times, but make it look easy and refined while it does it. And lurking behind the steering wheel is our singular control stalk. This is a big Mercedes thing to put everything in one place. We've got our washers, our wipers, our lights and our indicators all on the one right-hand control stalk. Moving into the centre of the car, we've only got a few buttons. This little trim panel of wood just here is a very useful thing for Mercedes, because you can have, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 buttons on this panel if you want to. But when you spent a serious amount of money, like £10,000 40 years ago, on a car like this, you don't want to be looking at blanking plates, so they can fit whatever is the basic things the car has got onto here. Then you can hide the poverty of your £10,000 car, which is about £40,000 or £50,000 in today's money, with a little bit of trim. So we've got a rear screen heater, the sunroof, and an interior light, and this is quite interesting for 1983, dippable headlamps. Moving ever so slightly down, we've got 3 dial, but it is dual zone. My goodness, we've got dual zone climate, or dual zone heaters, I should say. So we've got the choice of temperature on both sides, but only a single choice of fan, and our uppy downiness on the sliders. Underneath we have now got a modern Blaupunkt Valencia, but originally the option would have been for a Becker radio, Becker with a radio of choice for the Benzes. Beneath that, more of the Zebrano wood, which has got the hot ashtray hidden behind it, a huge chrome ashtray with a lighter socket. And moving further back still, we have got 2 things. We've got a big wooden area, and again, this is also really handy for hiding your lack of toys. This car, you'll notice, has got wind-up windows. If you've got electric windows, the switches will be living down here alongside the hazard warning light switch and the electric mirror switch for the passenger mirror over there. As I say, this has got the 5-speed manual gearbox. Standard equipment was a 4-speed gearbox. When the 5-speed came in, that became an option, and of course there was also the further option of an automatic 4-speed if you really, really wanted to. It cost more and I think makes the car worse. Behind that, a large carpeted storage area for putting odds and sods, and of course you get an armrest because we're in comfort here. What a lovely comfortable car. Looking up, we've got padding around the front of the car, we've got the big electric sunroof, we've got grab handles, got a lovely upholstered ceiling, and we've got a huge rear seat area. Moving on to the door card itself, we have got the same hard-wearing fabric as we find in the seats. These are of course colour-coded manual window winders because we're not animals after all. Armrest and a door pocket. Interestingly, although we've got an electric passenger mirror, the one close to you is controlled by this little manual nubbin. Now looking in the back of the car, obviously the same fabric as the front. It would be weird if it wasn't. The only car I can think of which is different is things like McLaren Victoria, because it's wiped clean. However, even if it's a taxi, you don't want wiping clean the back of a W123. In the doors though, we've got armrest, door handle, pop-up window. The central locking though, on this particular car only works when the engine's running because it uses the pneumatics and it takes engine power to pump up. It should store it, but it doesn't seem to want to. We have ashtrays in both doors, and we've got luggage nets on the back of the seats, which apparently cost 70 Deutschmarks in the options list. In the back of the car though, real Mercedes item, we've got the first aid kit storage area. This is obviously massively out of date, but it'd be great to just get that outer box and fill it with stuff that wasn't going to kill you if you needed to administer first aid. Also, of course, loudspeakers. Now, entering the trunkle area of the car, you'll notice this car is merely badged as a 200, not a 200 and something, not a 200 and a letter, a basic 200. But this is in its most basic, its purest form, let's call it that. Open the boot, big button in the car panel itself rather than in the boot itself, which is an interesting location. Very high rear lip, but it is plasticized so you don't scuff it. And the boot is absolutely enormous. You probably get 3 bodies in here if you're working in that kind of business. We have storage wells inadvertently on the left and the right. We've got a full-size spare wheel lurking under the carpet. And basically just lots and lots of space. This is a car that will take a lot of luggage. If you're going a long way with lots of people and lots of stuff, it's the car for you. Now I know I keep harping on about the price and the value of these cars, but to put it into context, at the end of the 1970s, inflation was kind of rampant, and in 1978 the price of these in the UK went up by £1,000 in 1 year. And so towards the end of the 1970s, a Mini 850 cost under £2,000, a Simca 1100 cost under £2,000, a house cost £11,000, the base model 200 cost £6 grand. say halfway to a house already in the base model. The 280e cost as much as a house, or the average UK house, at the end of the 1970s. So these were not cheap cars by any means. That said though, despite that even, they sold 2.7 million of them over the 11-year production run, which is just phenomenal. Of course, many of those were the base models, and people would just drive and drive and drive them and run them absolutely into the ground. If you bought a W123, you never needed to buy another car. That really does put the thing into context. And there were, as I say, so many options. Not many of them were very cheap either. So the options list goes on and on and on. You can have so many things, and this is just a brief highlight of the list. You can have an auxiliary heater for the rear. You can have a car phone later on. You could order a 7-piece luggage set, luggage nets for the back seats, which we have in this car, roller blind for the estate, a ski rack. The front seats can be set 30mm lower. You could also have orthopedic backrests for the front seats, or a reinforced base for the front seats, a folding armrest in the back, the electric sunroof, a mechanical hydraulic sunroof, a floor-mounted automatic transmission or a column shift automatic transmission, headrest in the rear, self-leveling rear suspension, Tempomat cruise control, later on an airbag, a rev counter, a two-tone horn, a rear fog lamp, central locking, ABS, automatic antenna for the radio, air conditioning, climate control, heat insulating window glass, alloy wheels, fire extinguisher, high capacity battery, roof railings, baggage rack, cargo anchorage, and these are just some of the many things you could pick on your W123. It is, it's so smooth. I expected it to feel slow, but it really doesn't. It feels comfortably okay. It doesn't feel like silly fast. If you get into like TVR or something, and the first dab of the accelerator, you're spinning the back wheels and going sideways through a hedge, you're not doing that in this car. A long throw accelerator. And people criticise the gearboxes on Mercedes. I should never get a manual Mercedes, they're too raunchy. And you definitely need an automatic Mercedes. No. This manual's lovely. I'd much rather have this than the automatic. It's a little bit of a rubbery feel rather than anything else, and the throw is a little bit long, but it's absolutely fine. The clutch is a little heavy. The brakes, I don't think we've got ABS on this particular one. Let's get onto the straight bit with nothing behind us and see what happens when I stand on the pedal. Okay, here we go. We stop quite quickly. There go my notes. Everything else is freestyle from here on in. But it stopped straight. It did dip, but it didn't dive and get uncontrollable. No ABS, but still a controllable car nonetheless. It's a nice car to be in. It's Mercedes quirky. The huge steering wheel, all the controls here on the right-hand stalk, the umbrella handbrake, which is a little bit unusual to use with a manual because you kind of want that extra hand for putting stuff in gear. You need a third hand or to steer with your teeth if you're pulling out of a junction. Just driving along, apart from the ride being wonderful and the pedals being quite nicely spaced, the steering wheel does sit a bit low in your lap. You've got amazing visibility. You can see everywhere out of these huge windows. The glass house is just immense. So you can really know what's going on with it. So there are quirks, but it does feel so good. It just feels like old school luxury, when luxury wasn't about how many bells and whistles, but about how good you can make something. And this was made as well as it could be made. I'm just driving through the country lanes and the sun is glinting on the three-pointed star. It just feels like quality. The only thing really I feel missing from a car of this nature, this is my 2025 shoes I'm wearing now, is air conditioning. I've got the blowers on, set to cool, but it's kind of getting, it's September for goodness sake. I've not got temperature on this watch. It feels warm. And it just feels a bit warm. Now for a car that's fairly big and fairly heavy, it does feel light on its wheels. I expect it to feel more ponderous, if that makes sense, but it doesn't. It just feels nice. I'm trying to ignore the economy meter. Joe says that driving around town like this, it's in the red now, he'll get mid-20s to the gallon, but on a gentle motorway run, he'll happily see low 30s. And that's his only real complaint about the car. He's had it a couple of years now, and he spent a fair bit on welding and repairs to make it the lovely car you see today. But he wishes for the economy it was faster, or for the speed it was more frugal. Either one would be a nice compromise. But even thrashing this, that's 3,500 RPM, which is redlining at 6. That's not all the way to the line, obviously. It doesn't feel loud, it's not intrusive, it's not rough. This is the basic engine. The fuel injected better engines, if you like, are even smoother. So I hope you've enjoyed this ride out in this amazing W123, the best car in the world. So am I now relieved this car is good? Does it measure up to expectations? Will I be disappointed handing over a fat wad of cash to Al at 6D diesels when I've got my car completed? Well, I'll tell you what, it's actually pretty decent. I don't think I'm going to be disappointed. On a day when I want a floaty, comfortable ride that does everything I want it to do, this will be your man. A bit like the Rover 75, but with a bit more hewn from granite built into it. So now, having driven this, I am actually really rather looking forward to getting my car back. It'd be like this, but better, apart from the automatic gearbox. It's just such an easy thing with those square corners to place on the road. The rear corners are fairly clear in your mirrors, so there's little kind of finlets on the top corners of the back wings. So parking it's not difficult either. What a great car. So thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed. If you have, please hit like and of course subscribe. Join me again next time driving something completely different.